I broke my sales record again, just by a few $100s, but the surprising part of that to me is that it happened in July when summer slowdown is supposed to be going on. I thought I wasn't even going to hit the 7K mark again until we got to the fall and winter when I'm selling more expensive stuff. But the reason I was able to hit a high sales number was because I had a lot of amazing high price sales in the month of July. A lot of new to me brands, some luxury brands, and some items that have been on my Bolo wish list for the longest. But we are going to get to all of that later on in the video, because in this reselling income report I decided to switch things up a little bit. First, I'm going to start off by going over the total sales numbers for the month, and then we're going to get into the 10 best sales on Depop, 10 best sales on Poshmark, and of course the 10 best sales on eBay. In the month of July, the total sales number was $7,543. That's in total how much I made across all three platforms. But after taking out fees such as selling fees, shipping costs, and all of that good stuff, my final earnings, what was paid out to me, was $5,185. From there though, I do have to deduct the cost of goods. In total, I paid $1,430 for everything that sold in the month of July. And in the end, I was left with a final take-home profit of $3,755. I listed, I think, the most I ever have last month, which was a total of 289 items. If you average that out, that's about 9 a day, which is pretty high for me. My goal for the longest has been to reach an average daily listing goal of 10 items a day. So that right there is pretty close. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sustain that much listing, but I am going to try. In total, I sold 197 items. That is not much of a difference from last month, but because we are getting closer to boot season, I am selling a lot of items that are worth more. So even though the amount of items I sold was pretty similar, the total amount I made was much higher. The average cost of goods for everything that sold last month was $7.26, and that's pretty much on par with what it's been all year. For the most part, that's around an average $7.26 is what I pay for my items. On average, these items sold for $38.29. That number is like a $4 jump, but that's only because of some of the high price sales that I had. Normally, my average selling price is more like $32 to $34. If we break that down by platform, on Depop, I sold a total of 35 items, and it was for a total of $1,476. So very close to that $1,500 mark. I never imagined that Depop would grow this fast for me. I always hesitated putting too much effort there because I thought it'd be effort wasted. But as I mentioned in some of my previous videos, I wanted to give it a fair shot, not think about it, and just go ahead and list on there daily for at least 3 months to then decide. And so far, it's going really good. On eBay, I sold a total of 66 items for a total of $3,217. And then on Poshmark, I sold a total of 96 items for a total of $2,850. This is the first time ever that eBay has more sales than Poshmark. Well, the amount of items on Poshmark is more, but the total sales number, it's more on eBay. So those are the numbers. Now let's get to some of the best sales on each platform. Starting off with Depop, the first sale I want to mention here are these Dr. Scholl's Huarache. That is a keyword that I've been using a lot for anything that looks fisherman style or Mexican style sandals. And then I put Y2K grunge open toe chunky heel strappy fisherman platform sandals. My earnings after all all of the fees for me was $21.38. And the best part of this sale is that it sold same day. Something I like to do when I'm waiting in line for the doors to open at the thrift store is search up trends on my phone. I will go to Google or Poshmark or all of the other platforms and just check out what kind of things are selling. Fisherman platform sandals is something that I was seeing everywhere. So once I got inside the thrift store, that's what my eyes were on the lookout for. When I saw these Dr. Scholl's sandals, I saw the tag. It did look old. It wasn't very current. But because of that trend and because I could see the item and see that I could use awesome keywords like grunge, Y2K, platform, and all of those things, I knew that would give it a lot of appeal. I ended up paying about $4 for these sandals. So in the end, that was a very great profit on an unassuming item. If you need more help with any of those two things, how and where to look up the current trends and keywords to use to describe your items, I will leave two resources linked in the description below. One of them is a video I recorded a while back sharing where on Poshmark on the app to go to look for current trends, and the other resource is going to be an ebook that I created. It has 20 fashion styles along with related keywords that you can copy and paste into your titles and descriptions. Both of those will be linked below. The next Depop best sell number 9 is these Guess quilted chunky block heel lace up combat boots. My final earnings for these boots was $27.25. These did take a little bit longer to sell. It took a total of 164 days. So I had to take a little break to attend my baby real quick, but I think we were on this Guess quilted chunky boots. The word quilted is a great one to use for any clothing, whether it's jackets, vests, or boots. Quilted, padded, puffy, all of those are great descriptive words to use. And another thing I wanted to mention about these boots is that they did take a long time to sell, but that is always the case as we enter a new season. The things that I listed last fall and winter are slowly going to start selling as we move closer to that season again. So I am going to have a lot of items that are fall and winter related that are going to start selling, and the days are going to be pretty high. But moving on to the next sale, the number 8 best sale on Depop was these Kohan Tan patent minimalist platform comfort pumps. My final earnings after fees, shipping costs, and everything was $28.04, and these pumps took a total of 19 days to sell. I wouldn't say that Kohan is a brand that I pick up a lot of or one that I pick up every time I see, but this style of shoe is. I pick up most of the ones that I see as long as they are in great condition. It does not matter the brand. I sell a lot of these office minimalist type pumps, but the fact that it was Kohan and a more modern Kohan style helped me get a little bit more out of them. Next up, we have these vintage Puma Future Cat Athletic low top sporty streetwear tennis shoes. My final earnings for these was $24.58, and these only took 2 days to sell. This is a style of Puma shoe that I've been on the lookout for lately because it came to my attention that they sell really quick on Depop, and if I can get $25 out of them after all of the fees and shipping costs and everything, then I can pay like $10 for them. Most of the time it's a little bit less, and that leaves me with plenty of room for profit. These, for example, I must have paid maybe $5, so after everything it's about a $20 profit, which is great. Next up, we have these Coach Mary Jane Ballet Flats logo canvas square toe ballerina shoes. My final earnings for these flats was $30.87, and a pretty quick sell as well. It only took 8 days. I almost left these shoes behind because I don't really have that great luck with Coach shoes. A lot of the time they sit for a very long time and end up selling for not that much. But the reason I decided to go ahead and give it a shot is because I was seeing that Mary Jane it's always been trending, but it's trending a lot more now. And especially these with the square toe. I paid like $15 for these flats, so in the end I managed to double my money, which is not that bad. Next up, we have the Stuart Weitzman black leather croc beaded dressy square toe pumps. They sold for, or no, they didn't sell for. My final earnings was $31.48, and they took a total of 34 days to sell. Like Coach, I have a lot of Stuart Weitzman shoes that sit around for me a lot, but because these were super unique, you can tell even by just the title, they were croc embossed, they had beads, they were dressy, they were square toe, and because, as I mentioned, I sell a lot of office pumps, all of that led me to believe that this would be a good pickup, and in the end, it did work out. Next, we have these Vince Camuto over the knee equestrian block heel distressed boots. My earnings for these was $33.75, and again, a very high day count because we are starting to move into boot season, so my older boots are selling. These took 200 days to sell. Another reason why these took a little bit longer could have been because they did have a little bit of damage inside the boot. There was a little bit of peeling along the leather, so that is a huge tip that I have for you if you plan on picking up boots. Always unzip tall boots all the way down if you can, and look inside to make sure that there's no damage there. If it's just a little bit of peeling, I'll still pick it up depending on the brand, but if it's way too much, it's probably best to leave it behind. Next up, we have these Vivea black knit stretch minimalist comfort square toe pumps. My earnings for these was $34, and they sold in just 8 days. Again with the comfort pumps, but also this brand is proving to be a very good one. I recently started picking it up like a handful of months ago. I've sold maybe about 5 now, and I have a few listed. The average sale price is always pretty high, and it always sells pretty quickly too. This is a fairly new brand. I think it was started in 2020 if I'm not mistaken. It seems to be very popular, and it sells on their website for a lot, and luckily that transfers over to the reselling site. So if you see this brand, go ahead and look it up. More than likely it's worth it. And then finally we get to a men's shoe. It was these Morel White Fit outdoor hiking Vibram tactical waterproof boots. My final earnings for these was $35.47, and these only took 4 days to sell. This was a pretty good sale overall, but I messed up because I charged the buyer $9.99 shipping, and it ended up costing me a lot more. I paid, well, not a lot more, a little bit more. I paid $11.30, and also the selling fee for Depop for these was $6. Now Depop is not charging the 10% selling fee. As of July 15th, we don't get any selling fees. I think we only pay like the payment processing fee, which is a lot less. But that only applies to new listings. This was listed before that took effect. So in many ways, this could have been an even better sale, but it still went okay. Then we get to the #1 best sale on Depop. It was these coral embroidered pointed mid-calf cowgirl western boots. My final earnings for these was $52.24, and they took a total of 30 days to sell. Compared to other boots by this brand, these right here were more on the simple side. I see this western boot brand Coral more of like a fashion western boot brand, because a lot of their boots have a bunch of studs, fringe, lots of crosses, and unique patterns. So these were a little bit more simple, but they still ended up doing okay. So those were the top 10 best sales from Depop that I wanted to talk about. I did have more sales that were even higher earnings, but I didn't want to add them to this list because they're brands and styles that I talk about all of the time. And so I wanted to keep the list useful and share new information, new brands. But for those of you who don't know, I am going to share 3 more, what I'm going to call honorable mentions here. First, we have these Ariat Western boots. They were men's, and my final earnings for these was $51.71. They sold in 4 days. If you don't know about this brand, it is a great one to look out for. Their Western boots, men's and women's, sell for a lot. And the next sale is also Ariat, but these are women's, and my final earnings for these was $65.97. They sold in 7 days. The next one is more of a style-based pickup. There were these Skechers vintage chunky sneakers. My earnings in the end was $51.86, and these sold within just 2 days. These right here, doesn't matter if they're Skechers, if they're, I think it's called Lower East Side. Mud is another one. There's many brands that make these style of shoes, or that did in the past. And so if you can find these vintage style chunky shoes, most of the time they're not going to be priced up at the thrift store because they don't really know that these go for a lot on reselling platforms. If you find these, go ahead and look them up. All right, now let's move on to eBay's top 10 best sales of the month. First up, we have these Bionic Print Comfort Low Heel Western Ankle Booties. My final earnings after all of the fees was $35.66, and they took a total of 53 days to sell. I mentioned in a previous reseller income report that my son was going sourcing with me. He's learning about what brands to pick up. He goes to one side of the store and I go to another, and in the end we meet up and look over what we got. This is a pair of boots that he ended up getting in one of his first few trips. It ended up doing really well, and he also got my highest price sale on Poshmark, which we're going to talk about later. Next is these Batula Birkenstock sandals. They were cheetah print. I also put in their casual, bohemian, flat, and ankle strap as keywords. My final earnings was $33.36 for these, and they sold in just 4 days. I never knew that Birkenstock had other sub-brands. I've sold another brand by them called Papilio, and then now it's this Batula brand. I've also seen that they make a brand called Footprints, and so far all of the Birkenstock and Birkenstock sub-brands that I've sold do really well. Next, we have these J. Crew green croc leather preppy slip-on formal tassel loafer dress shoes. My final earnings for these was $33.41, and they took a total of 51 days to sell. You have to be real careful with J. Crew stuff because some of their clothing and shoes can be worth a lot of money. There is a J. Crew tag that has 2 dots underneath it. That means they're J. Crew factory. Those aren't worth that much. I do pick them up if they are a good style, but I try not to pay too much for those. But when it says J. Crew made in Italy, or when I see that the shoe is all leather on top, inside, and at the bottom, I do go ahead and do further research. Also, they have a new tag that is more in cursive. Most of those shoes do really well. So if you see any of that, made in Italy, all leather, or a cursive J. Crew brand, go ahead and look it up because it could be worth more than other J. Crew stuff. Next, we have these Vans Galaxy Space Stars Canvas streetwear casual women's skate shoes. My final earnings for these was $28.94, and they took a total of 44 days to sell. I probably ended up barely doubling my money on these shoes because I did pay up for them. They were like $12 or $14. I normally like to keep my Vans at $10 or below, especially if they're just classic. But since these were like new and they were a little bit different, I decided to go ahead and give them a shot. They ended up doing okay overall. The only bad thing is that this ended up being my first neutral review on eBay. Thank God I've never gotten a negative one, but this lady ordered, I think it was an international sale, And it took her a total of a whole month to get her item, so that's why she left me that neutral review. Next up, we have these Born Morocco Distressed Leather Buckle Moto Biker Ankle Booties. They sold for $30, or not sold. My earnings was $30.56, and the days was pretty high on these. It was 117. Even though those days are pretty high, I'm still going to continue to pick them up. I don't know why, but around my area I find lots and lots of this style of boot in this brand during the fall and winter. I pick them up all fall, all winter, and they sell a lot for me. In the end, I do end up with a few that stayed around a bit longer, but during those months I pick up a lot of this in this brand, but other brands as well. Moto boots do really well. Next, we have these Vavea again, minimalist comfort knit stretch round toe chunky pumps. That right there was a great combo overall. It was the neutral color pump, the office, the comfort, and it was by that brand Vavea. That was a great combo, and it ended up being a really good sale. My final earnings was $44.69, and these took a total of 32 days to sell. Next, we have a men's shoe sale. It was these Ufus men's lightweight walking comfort recovery slip-on sneakers. The earnings for these was $47.82, and they sold in just 8 days. I must have skipped this brand a whole bunch before I came to realize that it is actually a Bolo. This company focuses on making shoes that are super comfortable for those people who are active a lot. They make sandals, sneakers. People search them a lot online. Most of their styles have a high sell-through rate and high average sale price. So if you happen to see this brand, look it up. Even if it's priced at $10, $12, oftentimes it is still worth it. I think I ended up paying like $15 for these. Next, number 3 on eBay, we have these Harley-Davidson grunge biker riding knee-high platform motorcycle boots. My final earnings for these was $85.10, and these sold in just 3 days. I paid maybe like $25 or $30 for these, but still it ended up being a great profit, which is why I don't mind paying up for Harley Davidson's women's boots. I'll pay up to $50, $60 depending on the condition and the style, because I know that I can go on to sell them for hundreds. Especially when they look like this, they're knee-high platform, that's when I really don't mind paying up. Same thing with this next brand. It was these Tory Burch quilted platform slides, padded leather slip-on platform sandals. Platform is when the footbed on the shoe is completely flat and it has some height to it. That is a great keyword to use during the summer on your chunky sandals. And then the word padded is something that I use when the material is puffed or quilted, because it's one that I've seen Poshmark recommending in their trending page before. So those two keywords are great ones to add to your sandals. Nonetheless, the earnings for these was $76.54, and these sold in just 3 days. I paid $45 for these sandals because they were new. I didn't end up quite doubling my money, but still a very great profit in the end. And now we get to the number 1 best sale on eBay, and it was these old gringo black distress leather cross-studded cowgirl boots. The earnings for these in the end was $120, and they took a total of 89 days to sell. This was on my Bolo wish list for Western boots for a very long time, so I was so excited when I finally ended up coming across them. I think I paid about $12 for them. I guess the thrift store didn't know about this brand, that it was worth a lot, so luckily I didn't have to pay up. It was taking a while. I started the listing at $197. In the end, they sold for $148, probably on a offers to watchers. That's how it sold, and I was left with the $120. So in the end, still an excellent profit with these. Those were the top 10 sales for the month on eBay, but I did want to mention that aside from that, I did also sell lots of personal items. I cleaned out my closets and stuff a few months back and finally got around to listing all of that stuff. And there are 2 very high price sales I made on eBay. that contributed to my overall high sales amount for the month. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned them here. It was 2 phones. They were both the same. They were Galaxy S23. One was black, one was purple. They both sold for $226 and they both sold in just 1 day. So if you have any old phones lying around, go ahead and try listing them on eBay. People are always on the lookout for phones there, it seems like, because they will use it for parts or go on and flip them for even more where they live. And later on at the end of the Poshmark sales, I will share a few more personal items I ended up selling in July. But first, let's start off with the 10 best sales for Poshmark. Starting off with these Johnston & Murphy snake print slip-on preppy flat loafer dress shoes. My final earnings for these was $25.98 and they took a total of 8 days to sell. I don't pick up everything I see by Johnston & Murphy, especially because it's such an old brand. A lot of the footwear that I see is outdated, but every once in a while I come across something that looks more modern. Even the tag looks a lot more new. I've sold a pair of women's loafers by this brand before that were modern looking like these. Those past ones sold for $50. So that's what led me to believe that these would do well too, and they did. Next up, the 9th sale was these Justin embroidered cowgirl square toe western boots. My final earnings here was $28.80 and these boots took a total of 83 days to sell. Justin boots are probably some of the most popular when it comes to western style boots, but they don't perform that well for me most of the time. I think that's because the thrift stores value it a whole lot, so they usually price them up pretty high. But then when it comes to the reselling platforms, the market value is just not there. And so there's not that much room for profit for me most of the time. But I still will pick them up if I can on occasion, find them really cheap, or if they're just extra unique or like new, then I give these a shot. But for the most part, I skip a bunch of Justin boots when I'm out at the thrift store. Next really good sale on Poshmark are these Michael Kors rubber knee-high tall riding equestrian rain boots. My final earnings for these was $26.78 and these sold in just 1 day. Very similar story as Justin with Michael Kors. The thrift stores value it a lot and so they often price it very high, but on the reselling marketplaces it is oversaturated and so you cannot get that much for them most of the time. So the only time I would pick up Michael Kors is when I can find it very cheap. I ended up paying $8 for these boots. The fact that they were tall and equestrian looking made me think they would be worth it, and they were. It was a very good profit in the end. Next up, we have the Skechers steel toe memory foam work shoes. They were navy blue. I threw in the keywords chunky, retro, and platform. They left me with earnings of $30.40. And these took a total of 10 days to sell. Most of my high price sales by Skechers are vintage styles. These right here were more modern and I did almost leave them behind because the bottom soles were very dark and I knew that it was going to take a little bit of effort in order to whiten them up a bit and make them look in better condition. I mean, they were in great condition overall, but if I listed them with the super dark soles, people were going to think that they weren't that great at the bottom. So I did what I had to do. I scrubbed it down with some shoe cleaner and I used a magic eraser and that cleared up the bottom soles really well. I paid like $8 for these, so in the end the profit was great. And I did recently make an updated shoe cleaning video, so if you want to know more about the products that I use to get my shoes looking real good for pictures and a rating system that I use to determine whether shoes are good to pick up or not based on condition, I will leave a video right here that you can go watch next, and I will also leave it linked in the description. Next up, we have these, I think this is how you say this brand, Atrix olive green suede chunky heeled platform clog shoes. The earnings for these was $31.20 and these took a total of 102 days to sell. I am not too sure what to think of this brand yet. I've started to pick it up a tiny bit. I have like 5 other ones that are listed right now, but they are just sitting and sitting. But in the end, these did sell for a good price. So if I end up paying like $5 for these shoes, I end up having what, like $25 in profit. So maybe it's still worth it. I'm not sure. I'm going to see how those 5 other ones do, and then I'll come back to you in some other reseller income report and let you know my final thoughts on this brand. Right now, I'm not sure. Next, we have these Team Slipstream cycling spin shoes. The earnings was $32 and they sold the same day that I listed them. This shoe category is a new one for me. I saw them at the thrift store lots before, but I never picked them up. They have like holes on the bottom and sometimes they'll have the clips. I didn't know what they were for and I didn't know what to look for in these type of shoes, but now I know they're cycling shoes. I know a little bit more about them and what to look for, what brands are good, so I'm starting to pick them up little by little. So far I know that these right here, I paid like $5 for them and they sold the same day, so now I know that Team, however you say this brand, is a good one to look out for in cycling shoes. And there is one more that I've sold about twice now. I'll leave it right here because I don't remember how to say the name of those either, but those are also good to pick up. The number 4th best sale on Poshmark was these Simple OS streetwear casual comfort unisex skate shoes. My earnings for these was $33.60 and these sold in just 10 days. These initially caught my eye because they look to be high quality. The first thing I do when I pick up a shoe by a brand that I've never sold before is look at the tag. I saw the tag, I saw that they were real leather on top, real suede leather. And so then I did the Google image search and that further confirmed to me that this was a very good selling skate shoe brand and it is one that I am now going to be looking out for. Number 3, we have this brand again, Ariat slip resistant steel toe slip on clog work shoes. These sold for $44 and the days was 196. Most of my sales by this brand are Western boots, but from time to time I will find some different kind of footwear by them like loafers or mules. But when I do find something other than boots by this brand Ariat, I try not to pay a lot for it because I know that it does not sell as well as Western boots and they can take a little while to sell, just like these did here. Next, number 2 is these Gani Chelsea black rubber outdoor chunky grunge Gorpcore rain boots. The earnings for these for me was $116 and they took a total of 31 days to sell. This is the other pair of shoes that I was talking about earlier that my son picked up. Initially when he brought me his cart of shoes and I was looking through them, I saw these boots and I thought it said Gianni when I looked in the inside in the insole, but then it registered that it actually said Gani. That is a brand that I've never sold before, but it just rang a bell somewhere in my head. I knew I'd seen it in a video somewhere or on Poshmark, I don't even know, and neither did the thrift store because they had it priced at just $5. So the profit on those was really good. But this next one right here is even better and it was these Angela Scott wingtip rockabilly derby Oxford dress shoes. Final earnings was $140 and they were listed for 100 days. These I paid $4 or $5 for and initially I picked them off of the shelf because of the style of them. But once I saw the inner tag and I saw what it said, again, I just knew that it was a luxury brand that I'd seen on Poshmark before. I would have picked it up either way, whether it was that brand or not, just based on style, and for that price, it could have been a store brand and I would have still picked it up because Oxford shoes do really well. But the fact that it was a luxury brand and that it was so cheap made it that much better. Now I just want to end off by sharing a few more personal items that I sold last month, which are mostly just my baby's clothing. If you're a mom, you know that kids grow out of their clothes so fast. My son is going on 18 months now and he had a bunch of clothes that didn't didn't fit him anymore. I donated a bunch, but the clothing that was in great to excellent condition, I decided to bundle those in lots by similar categories and sizes. I ended up with 3 lots and I sold one on each platform. But the one that I sold on Poshmark was this clothing lot. It was 9 shirts and I sold them for $20, which left me with earnings of $16. I also listed all of the shoes that didn't fit him anymore, but those I did decide to list individually because I thought I could get more out of them doing it that way as opposed to bundling those up. I sold these Air Forces for $24, these Nike foam shoes for $25, and then I sold some other ones on the other platforms. The great thing about that clothing is that all of it was thrifted, and so I bought it for very little, and now I get to post it and hand it down to another mom at a great price too. Some of those shoes were thrifted, but most of them I did get on Poshmark with the credits that I get from people who watch my videos and use my code. So if you use my code to sign up on the Poshmark app, thank you. Those credits come in handy. For next month's income reseller report, I am going to keep the same format. I'll probably just add at the end a segment where I share about 10 bad sales that I had in the month, because I think it's also important to share what didn't go well so we can know what to avoid, not just what to get. If you have any other suggestions for these type of videos, anything that you may find useful, leave it in the comments down below. Also, let me know down there, how has your summer been in your reselling business? If you want to watch more reseller income reports just like this one, I'll leave a playlist for you right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.